I'm Dr. Chaconis, Aris Chaconis. It's a Greek name, in case you're wondering. I'm a practicing neurologist, and I started practice about 30 years ago. And about 5 years ago, I joined Memory and Movement Charlotte. I had just left a previous job, and the next day, our founding physician, Dr. Edwards, called me and said, "Are you available?" And I said, "Well, yes, I am. As a matter of fact, I'm out of a job." And he invited me to take a look at the practice. And I had known Dr. Edwards was creating Memory and Movement Charlotte a number of years before he actually opened. We even talked about the concept. And many of you may know that he's a cardiothoracic surgeon. He practiced for 30 years. And when he decided to retire, and due to his experience with his mother and father, he decided to stick to it and practice medicine, and went to Johns Hopkins and trained in disorders of memory. And soon he grew the practice and needed some help, and I was very honored to join him. The thing that swayed me to join the practice was when I watched him. He invited me to the practice, and I sat in with some of the patients and families. And I realized that he had created a model that was remarkably powerful. He called it, and still calls it, the time and attention model. And in many ways, it's old-fashioned. It allows a physician the time to get to know the patients and families and to fully understand what's working well, what needs improvement, and how to manage things and how to support not just the patient, but the family. And I thought, my goodness, I've never had this opportunity in my entire practice, because, as you know, a lot of physicians only have a very finite amount of time to care for their patients. And more often than not, they don't involve the families. But as you all have come to know, the families are part of the team, and we can't do our job without them. I was particularly grateful to be given a chance to join, and I'm going on my 5th year, and I've absolutely been very much happy with this change in my practice. So I hope to be here for a lot longer. At this point, I'd like to involve Christy and Boyd as our team, Anita. And if I could ask you both, can you tell us a bit about your family and who is Team Anita?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, my name's Boyd Holland. This is my wife, Christy.
Hello.
It's great to see everybody. We see a lot of familiar faces. We see some faces that we have not met before, but we have really been looking forward to joining this session with you, Dr. Chaconis, to just have this conversation. So we're delighted to be here.
And we actually, Dr. Chaconis, unofficially met you when we were at Caregiver Connections, and you spoke in 2019. And you may not realize it, but you had a huge impact on us, and really helped frame, I'm gonna get a little emotional, but you actually taught us a lot and really helped set us up for success.
Yeah. What we call Team Anita is made up of my dad, and I do just want to take a moment to acknowledge just how much he has stepped into this and leaned into this and really gone above and beyond what I think a lot of caregivers really ever anticipate they have to do when they begin this journey. So he's kind of our CEO, so to speak. And then we have a great group of immediate family as kind of secondary caregivers. We have extended family members that are involved. We have dear friends that have helped out over the years. Everyone at MMC are people that we consider to be on Team Anita. Every single person at the Ivy are people that we consider to be on Team Anita. We don't know where we would be literally without Memory and Movement Charlotte and the Ivy as family resources for us. Kelly Markowitz has been one of our superstars. She's been on a few of these Take Charge Lives before, but she is our care manager. And we also have a few professional caregivers that spend some time with my mom, either at the house or out and about on town. And then Christy and I have worked with a professional therapist over the past couple of years to just help us navigate some of the dynamics of the journey that we've been on. So that's really who we consider to be what we call Team Anita.
Thank you for sharing that with us. And I'm very interested in Anita's story to the degree you feel comfortable you can reveal the details, because I know Dr. Edwards has been caring for her. Can you help our audience understand her story, her journey, so to speak, which would in turn be your journey as well? Perhaps some details about her symptoms and when they first started, and the successes, the challenges, the particular aspects of her management that you'd have had to tend to. I think that would be particularly enlightening for all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. When we look back at our timeline, I think the big jumping off point for us was around 2011. I had been asked by my parents to join the family business. My mom was a residential interior designer in Charlotte for 35 to 40 years. She had a wonderful reputation, and I had some background and experience that I could apply to her business that would allow it to scale and grow. And they asked me to join the business in 2011, which I did. And it was really through that involvement where I started noticing and observing some changes. There would be days where we would be working on a project and I would put together a task list for her. And some days I would come back and that task list would be completed, the T's crossed and the I's dotted. Other times I would come back and some of the items on the task list may have been done. Some of the other ones may not have been done. And, as I started to clue into it, it ultimately evolved to, I remember one time I left her a list of things to do, and I came back to check in on her later that afternoon, and she had literally forgotten that there was a task list, period. So that was, it took me a couple of years to really kind of clue into what it was that I was seeing. I didn't know if this was normal aging process. I didn't know if this was cognitive, dementia, Alzheimer's. We really did not know. But what I knew was that I was definitely seeing changes that were continuing to get worse. And so it was around, I believe, 2015, where I started sharing some of the observations that I was having with Christy. We just talked things through on what our next steps and best approach should be. And that led to a conversation with my dad and I. At the time, my dad was still working full time. He really wasn't spending, a lot of time with her during the day. They had their morning routine where they would cross paths briefly, and they had their evening routine where they would cross paths briefly during the week. But I feel like just the amount of time, I was spending up to 8 hours with her a day. That really gave me the opportunity to clue into this at a level that I think a lot of other people just didn't have the opportunity to do. And so me and my dad and my sister went and had lunch. We knew about Memory and Movement Charlotte. We've known Dr. Edwards really, truly for our entire lives. We grew up with the Edwards family. And we knew that he could be a good potential resource for us. And so we decided to have a meeting with Dr. Edwards, which ultimately led to my mom agreeing to come in and meet with him personally. And I think a lot of the reputation, Dr. Chaconis, that you referred to, that Dr. Edwards has in the community really behooved us, because she really felt like she was coming to spend some time with a friend, even more so than I think she felt like she was being sent to the memory doctor. So that we played that card to our advantage, and it was around that time that we officially began our annual membership with Memory and Movement Charlotte, and a few other milestones over the years was that as we continued navigating that journey and just processing the fact that there was definitely a diagnosis of dementia. There was cognitive decline that was beyond the normal aging cognitive decline. I really started to process the fact that I wasn't actually going to be scaling up and growing the business. I was going to be scaling down the business in a way that would let my mom down as softly and easily as possible. So that she never felt like the rug was being pulled out from under her. She never felt like we were putting a sign on the door that said no longer open for business. But, Christy and I were in a position that allowed me to continue that commitment and scale down the business. And it was really a beautiful process. Mm-hmm. And then in 2018 is around the time where we started having some concerns about her being at the house by herself. So as we scaled down the business, we actually closed up the brick and mortar site, but we moved her to an office to work remotely, which meant she was spending all day by herself at the house. So we started to have concerns about her being home alone all day. And then in 2018, one of our biggest milestones was that she had a terrible fall. 2019. She had a terrible fall. She was initially in the ICU. We knew within the first few hours that she would make a full recovery. We also knew that it was going to be a very long road. And coming out of that milestone is when we started leveraging the Ivy as a resource for my mom to spend time at during the day. And our journey has continued on since then. Really, I would say the next biggest milestone after that was the pandemic, which changed everything for everyone, regardless of what journey you were on or where you were at in life. But I do think there's something to be said for the impact that the pandemic had on people who were attending the Ivy and could no longer go to the Ivy. And I think equally important for somebody like my dad as the primary caregiver, who all of a sudden was spending 24/7, 365 as the caregiver and really unable to leverage a lot of the resource that we have become accustomed to lean on.
Switching to the Take Charge Live topic, the holiday hacks celebrating the season when a loved one has a memory disorder. I know Team Anita has had a lot of experience through the years in making sure that Anita has enjoyed the celebrations of the holidays, and you have a track record in making adjustments that are probably necessary as her condition has changed through the years. And before I ask you to share those particular adjustments, excuse me, I just want to make a general comment about memory disorders and holiday celebrations. And part of this is my own experience in my family. I always remind myself that, when we have preserved memories, this can certainly enhance the enjoyment of the holiday celebrations. But I always remind myself that the absence of intact memories does not have to diminish that enjoyment. So we never shied away from including our family members with memory impairment and related disorders from pivotal or key celebration points, whether it's holiday celebrations or birthdays or reunions or anniversaries. Because when you think about it, folks with memory loss are our mothers, our fathers, our brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, friends, and sometimes even our children. And they've all been with us, contributing to our holiday enjoyment and memories for years. So it's vitally important to us and including to them that they be involved and included and given the best advantage to find joy, particularly in the holiday gatherings. So if Team Anita can share with our audience some of the challenges that you may have faced with Anita along the way, and perhaps there was an evolution of how you involved her in the holiday celebrations.
Yeah, absolutely. I love all the things that you just shared with the rest of the audience, because it certainly relates to and resonates with the experience that we've gone through. But when I spent some time thinking back on what our journeys looked like since the diagnosis and how we've changed things, I really tracked back to around 2015. And I think the biggest realization and one of the biggest first milestones for us was that traditionally, I come from a family that is steeped in holiday traditions. For 20 years leading up until 2015, our extended family Thanksgiving gathering had been hosted at my mom and dad's house. And it was a wonderful gathering, but the reality that we came to, and this also included Christmas moving forward, was that, Memory and Movement Charlotte has really taught us from day one that our goal is to keep my mom calm, clean, safe, and loved. And so that is the lens that we tried to look at all of this through. And, at first, we're having conversations around, okay, well, moving forward, for my mom to actually be in charge of hosting Thanksgiving dinner at her house is actually going to cause her more stress and anxiety than it would create joy for her. And then our Christmas gatherings, around 2015, on Christmas Day, we're more of a small, immediate family. But even with that, still in play, we started to have conversations that moving forward, that would probably also cause more stress and anxiety for her than it would create joy. And so Christy and I really started to get creative in the conversations that we were having with my dad and my sister and my brother-in-law. And we came up with just some ways to approach my mom to explain some of the changes that were going to be happening, but we were able to do it in a way that, again, she didn't feel like the rug was being pulled out from under her. So I think back to one specific Thanksgiving in particular. We had communicated to her that Thanksgiving was going to be hosted at my house and Christy's house. But instead of just leaving it at that, we went into that conversation with a list of ideas on how she could still feel like she was going to contribute to the gathering and almost play like a co-host role without having to take on tasks that would cause her stress and anxiety. So I give Christy all the credit for this particular project, but Christy and I honed in on the fact that my mom is infatuated with acorns. And we came up with a project where we went on a walk with my mom and we collected acorns. And the goal of the project, the ultimate goal of the project, was to build a hurricane vase with acorns in it and a candle in the middle that could be a centerpiece at our Thanksgiving gathering. And so we really piecemealed out the project in ways, in small bites that were manageable for her to enjoy. and process. So we really split it out over the course of a number of days.
And the reason for that was we had just moved into a new home. And so we wanted to create moments for her to get familiar with the home and feel like she was a part of co-hosting. And so we dragged out this long project of us collecting acorns, then painting acorns, then her coming over to the house several days before, helping put the acorns. You can see the hurricane vases on the mantle here by the fireplace. The acorns filled up those hurricanes, and then we put the candles in it. All of this so that she had a sense of purpose, felt like she was a part of this. It was fun, it brought joy, but it also helped orient her to the space. And that was intentional in her coming several times the week leading up to Thanksgiving Day. And then on Thanksgiving Day, what was really funny and unexpected
was my mom literally stationed herself next to the fireplace that you see in our background. And we had actually opened up the gathering to some of our neighbors as well. And she sat next to the hurricane vases that she participated on putting together. And every time somebody walked by the fireplace, she would just make a comment to them and point to
like
it.
Like a Vanna White.
Yeah. And say, I made that.
I have to comment that was a wonderful technique, because in addition to having her feel pride and a sense of involvement and purpose, you also keyed onto something she could achieve and therefore enjoy, rather than trying to give her something that maybe would be too challenging or overwhelming.
Yes.
Speaking of overwhelming, have there been moments in the celebrations of holidays where you found that maybe the environment was not to Anita's liking or tolerability, and you had to change things?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like, honestly, with the pandemic, we kind of got a get out of jail free card last year, because we did start, because there were no extended family gatherings on our side. But we did start to notice, as a lot of other families do, we do a big gift exchange, and we'll do one with the immediate family and we'll do another one with the extended family. And 2 years ago, which is when we did our last gift exchange, we did start to notice that it was stressing her out and causing some anxiety. She was at a point in her journey where she couldn't remember who the gift was for and who it was from and what was in the box. And it really was just a confusing experience for her. So, moving forward, we're going to need to get creative on ways that we can create joy without doing a gift exchange, because I think with the signs of stress and anxiety that we observed in her a couple of years ago, I really think it would just bring the opposite of joy. I think it would stress her out to an unhealthy level. So that's one of the ways that we've gotten creative, and Christy's pulled out a little show and tell here.
Oh, yeah. One of the other ways, this was a few years ago, I don't think she'd be able to do this now, but for Christmas, we had her come over and help decorate the table the night before. And she's always been known for her handwriting and enjoying a task. So we had her create name cards. I don't know if the light's too bright, but we had her create place cards for the table. I mean, we didn't need them, but it was something that it felt special to her. She's always loved doing something like this. So that was just a great project that felt like a sense of purpose. And then I would say, with those acorns, that came up last year. She wouldn't, I don't know what we reused those acorns, and I'm sorry I don't have them with me. I couldn't find them, but we reused those acorns to do Thanksgiving bingo, and the acorns were the markers for the bingo. So that, what I want to say about that is as important as it's been for us to create special moments that provide comfort and joy, and for Anita, we also feel like it's as important to create moments and activities and projects that provide comfort and joy and connection for us and for Dawn and the other family and friends, because it's just as important that we're taking a moment to make sure that we're finding joy in what can be a very, difficult journey. And, one of the things just upon reflection and preparing for this conversation was that, a lot of this journey, at least for us, has been, letting go of the way things always looked so that we can really just find joy in the present moment. And so these things that we're telling you, these activities and projects were really designed so that we could all share in our memories. And so using those acorns as the marker for bingo last year, while it was fun for her, it also was meaningful to us because we had the memory of that project with her.
Yes. So even though a person with a memory disorder may lose memory over time and be more in the moment, I never thought about this, that the family members are creating new memories. So that's a very touching and very valuable thing to do. And you've taught me something. I'm wondering about Anita's tolerance to activities around the holidays. Does she have her limits where she wears out or fatigues? And do you have to give her breaks or even have her retire from the celebration?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yes. So for us, little tricks that we found over the years, ambiance is everything for us. So trying to create, we actually positioned where we're sitting right now in front of the fire in honor of Anita, because Anita never passes up a good fire. And so we've always strategically put her in front of the fire. And it's a great way for her to just kind of get lost in the flames, even if there's conversation happening around her. So ambiance is not just about beauty, but for her, especially as an interior designer who loves beauty, it's actually a wonderful way to help keep her calm. And so that anywhere where we can find beauty, no matter where we are, whether it's in nature, in a fireplace, that really supports any conversation that might be happening around her.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also been moments over gatherings over the past couple of years where one of us will recognize that she's experiencing a little fatigue or maybe being a little overstimulated. So one of us will just either grab her and go on a walk around the block and just remove her from that engagement for a little bit. Or if it's a smaller group, then we'll suggest that we all take a break from the conversation and go on a walk together. This isn't specific to holidays, but it certainly will work for the holidays. We learned years ago through the coaching that we received from all of our resources that we really discontinued asking my mom questions. Even, how are you doing? What did you eat for lunch? What did you do today? And we just started preempting that with, instead of saying, how are you doing? I just now say, it's great to see you. And instead of asking, how's your day been? Whether it's true or not, I just follow up my first comment and say, I hear you've had a great day. And both of those, that little simple change in how we first engage with her has made a huge difference over the holidays and beyond, because it gives her a very safe and comfortable diving board to jump off of. And it makes her happy because she loves being told that she had a great day. She loves being told that it's great to see her. she does not enjoy being asked how she's doing. What did she eat for a meal? What did she do that day? And so that hack right there has been a big change for us that, again, we've used for the holidays and beyond the holidays.
And just to add to that, I thought I thought about this as I was blow drying my hair this morning, but I thought really where we're at with Anita is if you think about the five senses, there's the sense of, there's communication, there's verbal communication, right? And for us right now, we feel like verbal communication can be a little exhausting or agitating for her at times. So what we're starting to do is really lean into those other senses. So we spend a lot of time noticing the beauty that's around us. What do we see in front of us? Point out the tree, point out the fire, point out the young children walking down the street. And then what do we smell? Gosh, that soup smells good, or those flowers smell great, or a lotion or an essential oil, or that smells good. What do we hear? Music. Music is just wonderful therapy during the holiday, whether it's Christmas songs or she loves Enya. Get lost in the music. What do you hear? So just leaning into those senses at this point in her journey has really been a wonderful way to connect with her and to keep us all calm.
Yeah, I'll add on to the music. I have a playlist on Pandora that I've created specifically for my mom. And it's all of her favorite songs. It's oldies but goodies. It's Forever in Blue Jeans by Neil Diamond. It's What a Wonderful World by Louis Armstrong. Sweet Caroline, she still sings to. But every time she and I go for a ride in the car, we listen to the exact same songs in the exact same order. And every time a song begins, she makes a comment of how beautiful this song is and that she hasn't heard it in a long time. And that is just, that is a great filler instead of, because when I'm in the car with her, it's usually for about 45 minutes at a time. So for her to feel calm, clean, safe, and loved, listening to her favorite music while she's being, chaperoned around town, or chauffeured around town, and removing the variable of verbal conversation completely from the equation has just worked beautifully.
And then when I'm transporting around town, in addition to the music, I also bring a soft blanket. So just the touch, the sense of touch. And then I bring our dog. So she, pets him. Yeah, but in all, seriousness, like just, again, that's another sense of just touch and what calms her.
But before we transition to question and answer, I wanted to ask you something that I think I know the answer to this, or what I would do with my family members that seem to work. What about preparing Anita for the celebration? Are there anything in particular, like assuring that she's well rested, or treating sources of pain, or making sure she's not cold or not too hot, bringing an extra sweater, things like that? Have you had to do that for her?
Absolutely. I would say all of those resonate with us. One of the things that we're noticing more and more in her journey is the time of day that events happen. So that's a combination of her being well rested, and it's also being cognizant of avoiding a gathering that happens when she might potentially be sundowning.
And Dawn is really good about making sure she gets naps in, and that she has layers to wear. I would say Dawn has really excelled at like making sure he's preparing her for the day.
Yeah. So, and we're definitely being conscious and more thoughtful than ever about, her having the appropriate things she needs to be the right temperature, whether she needs to get cooler or warmer. I will also say that this goes back to the hack of no longer asking her questions. And this was a holiday hack that came out of one of our family meetings with the Ivy. But we've almost discontinued telling her where she's going and when she's going. So we're making sure she's well rested. We're making sure that she has what she needs to have a successful journey and gathering at the event. We're making sure that we're being conscious of the time of event. But one of the things that we started to experience about 1.5 to 2 years ago was that if we did tell her that we're going to location X at time Y, that in and of itself started to give her anxiety and stress. And so the pivot that came out of our family meeting with the Ivy was stop doing that. Just make sure you have what you need to take care of her, and just put her in the car and say, we're going to go run a couple errands. And man, that works really well.
And this is a final hack. And then Dr. Jaconis, I know you want to, we've got to move to the question and answers, but this one was a good one. I want to say that this came out of a family call with MMC, but Anita has always loved, a glass of Chardonnay, and rather than fighting, and it was really best for her not to have alcohol now with the medications that she was on and just her imbalance and all. But this non-alcoholic wine, it's called Free, F-R-E. We keep this stocked at our house. Dawn keeps it stocked at their house. When we go on vacation, we bring a couple bottles and give it to the kitchen staff. And this is what they bring out to the table. And what it does is it allows Anita to feel like she's very much a part of what's going on, and that, nothing's changed. There's no adjustments having to be made for her. And this was, I think, really a big deal on just her being included. Yeah. Feeling inclusive.
Yeah.
I wish I had known about that. My mother-in-law, before she passed, loved Chardonnay, and I would smuggle it into her in small quantities. And she would tolerate what I doled out, but then the nurses found out, and I got into some serious trouble. But, it was only a little bit. But anyway, you both are amazing in the knowledge you've accumulated through your experience and experimentation. And I know you followed Anita's lead. She was pretty much training you on the job.
Yes, yeah.
Taught me a lot today as well. But I think our timing is pretty good. Melanie, do you want to open it up to questions from our audience?
At that point, she really couldn't leave her room, and we just filled her room. We just came in and we sat on the floor, and it was a very small room in an assisted living home. And she really wasn't in a place to have dialogue, but we just all enjoyed each other in her presence. And it filled the room with love. It filled the room with joy. We just celebrated her honestly, there wasn't a whole lot of engagement with her because she just wasn't able. But our intention was to not bring any stress in the room, to not bring grief in the room. Our intention was to bring calm, love, joy, and just really create the buzz that always filled her home when she hosted those types of gatherings. And it was very meaningful.
What clues do you look for on tolerance for temperature changes?
Ooh.
Well, Anita always just would be real direct and say, I'm cold. I will say, Dawn and I figured this out, that we just made sure her feet were warm. So if we could put boots on her feet, on her extremities. So, make sure her extremities are warm. So gloves, hat, your head, hands, feet. That's a good framework, a good base. Dr. Jaconis, do you have clues?
I do. I'm almost 64 and I can no longer tolerate the cold. So I'm making an assumption that as we age, we generally find it harder to tolerate extremes in temperature, sometimes even minor changes in room temperature. So, the clues may be, before the celebration, you may find clues from just, your general experience. Does the person need to wear a sweater when it's 72 degrees in the house? Or at least be prepared for the person to feel uncomfortable bringing in some extra clothing, or being conscious that they may feel too warm, particularly if they're by the fireplace, and maybe they're wearing something that they can shed, they could take off. Sometimes people can't voice these discomforts. We talk about, an intolerance to external stimulation, such as too much chaos or commotion or too many people talking. We have to be instinctual about internal sensations that can be unsettling and distressing to someone with memory disorders. So it could be feeling hot or cold, fatigue, as we talked about. Something I learned recently, I never thought of this, ill-fitting dentures, where a person is sort of struggling to keep them in place. They may feel a sense of embarrassment. They may be struggling and not enjoying their experience because of something that simple. If there's any, a full bladder can do it. So, obviously being conscious of, strategic toileting, taking opportunities to make sure that they're comfortable in that regard. But any experience you can glean in advance of the celebration. For example, some people wonder, can I take my loved one to a party and not just host it in their home? And obviously, I think all of us are aware of the change of routine or the fatigue in the travel. And so if you're thinking that might be an opportunity, maybe a short trip in advance of that for brunch or something, to just test the waters. How well do they do out of their routine, and how much stamina do they have? And just be prepared for the unexpected, because sometimes what they previously tolerated, they may not. So, that brings up the issue of having supplies with you and being ready. One thing I would say is some patients require as needed medications. And while at our clinic, we try very hard not to use sedating medicines for the obvious reason of, someone who's sedated can't really enjoy their environment as well, and they might even fall, for example. But just being ready for agitation, and if the doctor's prescribed some kind of medication to have handy, to be ready if you have to use it. But obviously, I think most of us as caregivers would try to avoid these medicines and use non-pharmacological means to help bring calm and reassurance. And it might be to your point, Boyd and Christy, taking breaks, maybe leaving the celebration, taking walks, and then returning and see if the person is able to re-engage.
And two thoughts to add to everything that you just said, which thank you. Those are all such helpful reminders. We just had to come up with a solution. Anita wears Depends, and she needs to have that changed more often. And so for the holidays, if you are traveling or visiting loved ones, one of the hacks that we just came up with was inserting a pad into the Depends so that you don't actually have to take your pants off to change the Depends. You can just change out the pad. And that can be really nice if you're at an event or at a other family member's house, that it's easier just to change out the pad. And then, oh my gosh, I've forgotten what the other one was. In terms of comforting, if agitation shows up, some of the ways that we've been able to comfort with Anita is not to so much try to make sense of what she's saying she's upset about, because it doesn't always make sense, but to try to just connect with the emotion that you're seeing in them. So if I spend time trying to have what she's saying make sense and I'm trying to solve her problem, that doesn't help. But if I just really try to connect with the emotion that I'm seeing, then I can comfort her. So, just agreeing with her, saying, I understand how you feel. I'm so sorry you feel that way. If it works, just putting your hand on them just to offer understanding and comfort seems to help with agitation. And then, it's almost like with a toddler, like changing direction. So then, just point out the fire or bring in, so gosh, isn't this nice? Or change the subject and just redirect is, I think, the word I was looking for, or turn on a holiday song.
Yeah. And the showing the empathy and the redirection was another hack that I really need to give credit. I can see her on the screen. Leah Cooper coached us big time on that. And just leaning into that instead of trying to problem solve something that doesn't make sense has really made life easier for all of us, especially my mom.
We have another question in the chat box. Can anyone comment on trying to understand pains that may be hurting the person?
Reading into that question, sometimes a person with a disorder of memory may not be able to articulate that they're in pain in the first place and may not be able to identify the source of pain. So we have to use our skills to infer that something's wrong. And sometimes there are clues in the person's medical history, that if they have some chronic pain disorder, perhaps it's flaring up, like an arthritis, for example, or if there is some intestinal problem. Hopefully with regular dental examinations, we won't be dealing with an abscess or an infection in the mouth. And one comment about that, the reason I bring up the dental part, sometimes that is overlooked in the hygiene world of someone with a disorder of memory until it's too late. And I certainly recommend regular dental visits and maybe increasing the number of visits for hygiene appointments to make sure the teeth are as healthy as possible. And sometimes, we can't figure it out and something's wrong and maybe at the moment we can't tell. But, if a person is holding a limb or holding their stomach, maybe you'll get some clues. But, most people with pain look like they're in pain. They may be grimacing or doubled over. There's something that's a clue. And you may not be able to remedy it at the moment, but it may be a sign that we're at the end of that moment of celebration. You might have to remove the person from that area unless they can rest outside of the celebration and recover. I know it's a challenge. I've had that personal challenge as well with patients in the hospital, particularly stroke patients who've lost the ability to speak. Sometimes you just have to infer what the source of the pain is.
Thank you. I would like to echo one of the comments that is in the chat to say thank you for sharing your story and your experience. You've reinforced things that I do that have worked for my mom, as well as taught me new ways to handle certain situations. I really appreciate it. I think that's true for all of us. This has really been such an enlightening conversation. Thank you so, so much. I'd like to take a moment to introduce and thank our sponsor for Take Charge Live. This program is generously sponsored by Embrace Home Care, and that is the home care division of Southminster. And we have Thomas Brewer with us tonight to talk a little bit about what he's doing and about our partnership.
Hey, how are you? Hey, thank you. That was a great presentation. Appreciate all the insight. Melanie, thank you. We really value this partnership that we have between Southminster, Embrace Care, and Memory and Movement Charlotte. Obviously, many of our residents of Southminster are also members at Memory and Movement, so they get a lot of value out of everything that you guys provide. So we really appreciate that. Just quickly about Embrace Care. We are Southminster's licensed home care provider. We provide home care anywhere in Mecklenburg County. So we are not just a home care provider for our residents. We do go off campus, focusing primarily in the South Charlotte area. We're not a new home care provider either. We've been around for 11 years. Actually, next year will be our 12th year providing home care. And we provide CNA level, so nurse aide level, companion level home care, as little as 4 hours a day up to 24 hours a day. So as your needs change, as the needs of your loved one change, we can certainly change the frequency of our care. And we put together a very individualized personal care plan for everyone that we care for. Everyone has different goals, whether it's activities of daily living or just taking mom grocery shopping to get her out of the house. So we work everywhere in between that area. We are owned and operated by Southminster. So everyone that is employed by us is a Southminster employee. So we appreciate being able to sponsor this. And if you ever need anything, you can go to www.southminster.org, click on home care. And there's tons of information. And of course, you can reach out to anyone at Memory and Movement, and they have my information as well. So we really appreciate this partnership and all you guys are doing for the community.
Thank you so much once again, and happy holidays to everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Holidays.
Happy holidays.